Emil Guillermo, Emil Muck to you. I know. Where have you been live? Usually you're live. You do these pop-ups, and now you're doing it at all these like not inopportune times, but different times. And yeah, I do. It's like as the spirit moves, but at least we're live. Professor Dan will be here with us shortly, but welcome to my takeout, my Emil Muck's takeout, my takes on all things considerable. And there are a lot of things to consider. There are a lot of things to consider today. So, I first of all, if you know me personally, you know that I'm grieving, or mourning. My brother-in-law died, and usually, do people mourn brother-in-laws? Of course. Mother-in-laws? No, of course. I love all my in-laws. I mean, that's sort of the joke that, oh, you don't like your in-laws. I loved my in-laws. And my brother-in-law, passed away day after Thanksgiving. I wrote about it in Inquirer.net. But they are extending the mourning period because there's no room at the inn. There literally is no room at the inn. You can't get a date to be put in the ground until December. And I was wondering, boy, if it were like strictly religious and you got to get in the ground within, 48, 70, 72 hours. I mean, there's like religions that have that, that provision. You got to get in. We're going to be mourning till the 21st. I mean, it's like ridiculous. So a lot of it kind of, you get the reality of it. So that's sort of good, but sort of bad. You're not wailing as much as you would, but we were wailing before, as he was about to go and hoping that he could pull out of the situation. He didn't. My Manong Virgilio, may he rest in peace. But now we're going through the novena. We're going through all the Filipino customs of what to do with the dead. And it's sad, but I find that immersing yourself in work, and immersing yourself in the stuff that makes you, like talking about the stuff that's happening in the world to an audience that may or may not be there. I mean, well, at some point, people will find us. But thank you for joining us. You can read my column on the Inquirer.net and also on Substack and catch what I've been going through. I want to, with Dan, we'll bring up some other things, but I want to tell you about all the stuff that I'm doing coming up, and you'll see it on the crawl. This Saturday, I am emceeing the Josephine Miles Awards of Penn Oakland. Penn is the Poets, Essayists, and Novelists organization, Penn Oakland. The working class Penn, it's a national organization, but this is the local Penn Oakland. I'm on the board of directors. I'm emceeing the program. It's at 2 p.m. at the Black Repertory Theater on Adeline, right, in Berkeley, and it's free. So come, 2 p.m. Saturday. We'll honor authors. William Wong is being honored. He'll be there, 2 p.m. We honor work from 2024, and it should be fun. I'll be there talking, and Ishmael Reed, the co-founder of Penn Oakland, he'll be there. Tennessee Reed, his daughter, is co-MC with me. But it's free if you want to see what's happening in the literary world from the perspective of Penn Oakland. Check it out. It's free. Black Repertory Theater in Berkeley this Saturday, 2 p.m. All right? So, also, I wanted to mention, and you see the little crawl there, all the things that I'm doing. On December 15th, a week from next Monday, December 15th, I am going to tell some Christmas stories. Now, come on, Emil, come on. Is that woke enough? I mean, saying Christmas, and aren't you being exclusionary? Well, I explain that. I get the Jews in there. but I'm telling my Christmas stories at the Monday Night Marsh, December 15th. So please come see my contribution. I'll do about 20 minutes. There are other people on the bill. It should be fun. I know, you're probably doing Christmassy stuff. I'm doing a Christmassy type show about my Filipino memories of Christmas. And it has nothing to do with paroles. We didn't have paroles. We had Christmas trees, fake ones mostly. But I talk about my fake Christmas tree in this story. And also my father. And I talk about my Jewish mother. And I talk about my gift this holiday season. Gift of life. Anyway, working on some stories. Catch it at the Monday Night Marsh, December 15th, 7 p.m. Okay, out on Valencia Street in San Francisco. Now, also people saying, hey, I missed your Emil Amok 69 or 69 Emil Amok, whatever you call it, Emil. What is it you're calling it? Well, I'm doing another version of that show, another iteration of that show in San Francisco in January, up on Potrero Hill. So definitely catch that. I'll put information on amok.com, my website, when I update that website, and you'll find out how to get. And here's the thing. If you go see me there in Potrero Hill in San Francisco, it's free. So, it's in the spirit of you do the show, you pass the hat, and then you do it, and it's wonderful. You like the show, right? That's coming up in January. And then I'm doing that show, and then I'm doing a comedy show. They say, look, I like the narrative, Emil. I like the pathological narrative of Filipinos in America and Asian Americans in America. But can't you just tell jokes? Yes, I can. So I do a jokey show. I know you say, you're all just a joke, Emil. No, I do a jokey show in February at this same place. I'm calling it Emil Amok Anchorman. The news made me do it. It could develop into a full one-man show, but it's just a jokey show for now. That's in February. And then this year, I'm going to see what happens if I get into any other fringes. I might get into Orlando, might get into Vancouver. I don't know. But I'm going to limit the number of you don't limit the number of fringes. The fringes say no to you. And then that's it, I don't know if I really want to go to Regina or Saskatoon, but I will try to get into Winnipeg. Edmonton already said no. Well, they don't say no. They say you didn't get drawn. Sorry. And I'll try to get into Vancouver again because I love Vancouver. And we'll see how Canada goes, because it's always interesting to cross the border and see if they let you back in. So that's Emil Amok, an update on Emil Amok and what I'm doing. And so now let us do the news, and let me bring in my friend and cohort, Daniel Phil Gonzalez, College of Ethnic Studies, Asian American Studies, Professor Emeritus. He always comes in toward the end of the week. I thought we'd do it on Thursday instead of Friday because, I want more people to see us during the week. And if we do it Friday, we can. And some big news happens all the time on Thursday. Welcome, my friend, Daniel Phil Gonzalez.
Well, yeah, happy Thursday. And my condolences, really, to your family.
Thank you.
And the Pastor family as well.
Yeah,
I believe that one of their children, at least one, went to SF State.
Yes, at least one. And one went to UC Santa Cruz, but one went to SF State. Mm-hmm. And they revere you, Dan, as a Filipino-American knowledge resource. And,
I appreciate that tremendously. I very frequently am credited with more wisdom than I actually hold. But thank you.
Your humility, your humility astounds me.
Well, if it's really humility, it astounds me too.
All right. So, all right. One quick question. I appreciate the the condolences. Now we're in the novena mode, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And it's important, but I sense that the younger generation, they take it seriously, but they also kind of are more realistic, and we are missing the older. Well, now we're older, right? But we're missing the generation that really
Yeah.
were into it, right?
Yeah.
And there's a kind of watering down in the generation sometimes, I think, right?
That happens. That happens across the board. Culture changes,
Yeah.
and the general social dynamics of this particular society, and
Mhm.
actually global Western
Yeah.
influenced societies, right?
Yeah.
It causes major mutation, and it all comes down to social media. I
Yeah.
mean, we talk about social media as though it's a national problem. In the U.S.,
Yeah.
it's a global problem.
Yeah. And the thing is, uh, and this is how bad it gets. It would be different if I had to drive over there and be with them. But now we're able to do it on Zoom. We're able to do
Zoom,
it
yeah,
virtually,
you can do a
you
Zoom.
know?
I've done that. Well,
Yeah.
we did it because of COVID.
And yes, exactly. And during COVID, I went to three funerals. I don't know if it really was the same,
Yeah,
but
and even when it was local, there was a limitation on the number of people that could attend the actual physical burial.
yeah, yeah,
The cemeteries here, and Colma is one of the biggest cemetery areas in the country. Uh,
yeah,
they limited it to 5, and so that was absolutely just immediate family relatives.
yeah.
And most families, Filipino families of a certain generation, right? They had way
Mhm.
more than 5 in immediate family.
I know. Well, so this is what I'm feeling. I mean, there's that happening to my family, but also there's this idea that there was no room at the inn. They couldn't get the
Yeah,
burial ground, so we're extending this out until at least 3 weeks, and so I don't know if that's good or bad. I mean, I'm still mourning my brother-in-law. I really miss him. It's almost like you we would only talk about sports. We never talked politics. And he grew up in Marcosville. He's from the home country. He's from the hometown. And not that I know his politics at all, but just there are more important things to talk about, like whether the Warriors should play Jonathan Kaminga was number one. That was not number one on our list of things to talk, because Jonathan Kaminga was part Filipino, right? That was the joke.
okay,
The,
okay.
the Filipino player Jonathan Kaminga. Oh,
Yeah.
Kaminga, that's not Filipino. He's Congolese. Oh, I thought he was Filipino. I'm
That's so Filipino. It is so Filipino just to claim,
Yeah.
just to
Well,
claim.
I'm willing to claim, but now he's not playing well. I mean, we're like saying maybe we should trade him for Giannis.
For
Giannis,
the third
please.
time, right? For
Yeah,
the third
yeah.
time in his career, in his young career. What did he, just turned 21 or something?
Well, he's so young, which is why you want to give him a chance, Kaminga.
Yeah,
But
it's just that he's hot and cold. There's nights when he's terrific, and then there's other nights where he's kind of dull.
as is the problem with most of the Warriors now, they're
Yeah,
hot
this
and
this
cold.
is
There's no
true.
one. There's
This
no
is
one who
true.
is consistently, like, even Curry is not as consistent as he used to be. I mean,
Absolutely.
if you only see the
Absolutely.
highlights, he makes every shot in the highlights. But if you see the whole game,
Well,
miss,
but
miss, miss.
Seth did well. His brother did
Yeah.
well.
Oh yeah, is well. Seth is he's the leader in percentage, and I hope the Warriors do well. But I have learned from living and dying with the Warriors and other sports teams that it's not worth it to just to live and die with your teams. I mean, the teams. It's important. You develop a sense of what loyalty. I don't know, you develop some sense,
Yeah,
but
and that's
but
good.
they are it's a distraction. It's a
What it is. That's what
good
it is.
distraction from the things that are more important, that we should pay attention to, like the news. Like, we should pay attention to the news. And
If people spent 1/10 of the time observing real journalistic news,
Mm,
okay, 1/10 of the time of their observance of all kinds of sports, right?
yeah.
The country would be way better off. Assuming that they act in a manner that's consistent with being accurately, correctly, and
Yeah.
informed.
And that's not necessarily the way, we're not saying the news is presented and we want you to act in a certain way
Yeah,
because of the way we're presenting the news. It's just that there is ultimately a good bad way to respond
yeah.
to news that you're given. Like, for example, if we have a Department of Defense and the president saying, "Yeah, let's go and bomb these boats in the Caribbean from Venezuela because they're bringing drugs in the United States." Is that a good thing? Should we do that? Oh, yes, of course we should do that because they're bringing drugs in. Oh, but wait, the laws of war say this could potentially be a war crime. Well, the laws of the United States say you need in an act of war, you need Congress to come in. Or and then if it's not a war, well, what is it? There's the rules of war, Geneva Convention and whatnot. But there's also if that's not applicable, then maybe it's just a crime. Maybe it's just murder. And then shouldn't we be upset? That's how we should act. And people are saying,
The
no,
the
we like.
military, the U.S. military code of conduct is the
Mm,
closest thing to rule, right?
mm,
When people think international, right, and they think rules of war, and they think of Switzerland, right, and
mm,
all those kinds of issues, right? That's remote. That's remote to them, and for
yeah.
a lot of Americans, it's dismissible because it's remote. You know,
Mm,
what is very close is the Uniform Code of Conduct, man, military code of conduct, and it defines. They actually give an example that says,
right.
for example, right?
Right.
If a ship is struck and it's wrecked at sea, right, and there are
Mm,
survivors, okay, uh, killing them would be a crime. I mean, they actually come out and say it, and
yeah.
it's their illustration, and so we're not even at war. Just
Yeah.
because they rename or try to rename the Department of Defense the Department of War, right? And then they declare that Venezuela is at war with us because they be bringing drugs into the United States, and they
Yeah.
haven't even shown any connection. If you're going to make that claim, at least show a direct connection
Yeah.
between those boats, the content of those boats, and the shores of the United States. At least show us that, right?
So or some evidence, and we don't have evidence, and
Yeah.
if we did have
We keep
evidence, it would.
sinking the evidence. We
Yeah.
keep sinking the evidence, even if it takes us 4 shots.
Yeah. Well, it would presume if we had evidence, it would presume we had a case against a suspect or suspects, and we don't have suspects because you're right. We kill them, we kill the suspects, and we don't. And if we had the suspects, we would then be liable to give them due process, and we don't have that. We don't have due process,
Well,
and
but
then that.
they're not even giving due process to citizens. They're just
Yeah.
rounding them up and sending them back to wherever they think they want to send them, right? And
Yeah,
and
and
it's really gotten very, very bad. But
well,
but see,
this.
people don't care
Mm,
because once again, it's not them.
yeah.
Okay. Remember all the Latinos that said they're only going to go after the criminals. I want to know how
Right.
they feel right now. Are
Right.
they accepting any of this stuff as fact?
Yeah.
Okay, that so
Yeah.
many people are being rounded up and taken away. Uh,
Mm.
because our critics, the people who criticize us, say that we're clowns because all of this stuff that we're saying is not true. It's not fact. Okay. And in point
Yeah.
of fact, it is
Yeah.
fact. And we double and triple our sources to make sure that there's consistency in the positions that we take. Then we take perspective and opinion, all right, based on that.
But
And so,
but you
how are they
yeah,
informed?
but this is the thing, Dan. Most people will take the news, and instead of going to the news, they'll say, "I got it directly from Trump," or "I got it directly from Hegseth," and I trust them more than I trust the news. So why should I get it filtered if Hegseth and Trump say this is the way it is? This
Yeah.
I'm gonna, this is most people who have a casual uh, relationship to their democracy will say, "Yeah, well,
They bought
we
it.
believe
They
in
bought.
Trump. We
How
believe in
long?
Hegseth. That's
How
the
long
Father.
have the
That's the
Republicans? It's not
That's the
just
Father,
Trump.
Son, and the Holy Ghost."
It's not just Trump, right? This goes all the way back to the
Mhm.
Cold War, the beginning of the Cold War. Post, there were liars once again on all sides, right? At any time in the history of
Mhm.
the United States. However, ever
Mhm.
since the beginning
Mhm.
of the Cold War, right? The
Mhm.
misstatements and outright false statements and lies, right, have
Yeah.
been coming in greater frequency and quantity from the right than from the left or the center. Okay, so that means that on in the center and on the left there are more people who are actually doing journalism, okay, and stating facts, right, and then opinion makers or staters are also basing their analysis on those facts. The problem is, generally, everybody's saying it's all fake.
Yeah.
But then what does that mean about the sources that they use? If it's all fake, then they have to question the sources that they use as well. So they're saying that it's all fake is itself false because they're believing,
Well,
right,
it's
one set of sources.
it's just that, yeah, it's just the rebuttal of Trump and Hegseth is, oh, fake news. That's fake news, and most
That's it.
people will
But
take
everybody, but
Trump
see,
and
the
Hegseth
Republicans,
at their word.
yeah. But my point is, Republicans have been doing that. The right, same right, and then
Yeah.
the invasion of the Republican Party by the right. Okay, particularly after the signing of the Civil Rights Act, right, in 1965, and
Hmm.
the shift of the Dixiecrats, Southern racist Democrats, right, over to the Republican Party, and
Hmm.
that took less than two presidential election cycles. It took less than 8 years for that transformation of the Republican Party to occur, and that's the Republican Party that we have today. Back in the 60s,
Hmm.
half of the Republican Party signed on to the Civil Rights Act. They
Oh,
they were
oh,
in
yeah.
favor of a, but once again, one of the hidden reasons for that is that they wanted to break the back of the Southern Democrats and the Democratic Party in that way. So if you were able to split the Southern
Yeah.
Democrats away, right, then they would
Hmm.
they would rule, right, Congress. Okay, they always
Well,
think
see,
that.
that yeah, that's interesting also because LBJ people have there have been a number of biographies of LBJ within the last Lyndon Baines Johnson within the last 10 years.
Yeah,
I mean, they've always pointed out how he had a problem. He pushed that through, and he got his majority, and it was for the good of the country. But look at
and
how
for
short
the
lived
good
it
of the
was.
people, for the good of people of color.
Yeah.
Primarily, it was for the good of black people, right? That was the
Mm.
intent. But
Yeah.
but what other people of color need to understand is they benefit by that.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But one of the things that I realized, like even when something like the Vincent Chin case came up,
Oh man.
I was surprised that there was some pushback on people who wanted civil rights charges brought up against the killers of Vincent Chin because they didn't think it was a civil rights violation. I mean, there was that kind of pushback because they saw the world or the nation saw civil rights solely as black and white and not Asian, not brown, but black and white. And we've been fighting that all along until to this day. And now it's now we're kind of lumped in, and but they want to do away with all of us.
Well, they didn't believe it was a civil rights violation, not only because it was not racial, right?
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, they also didn't think it was a civil rights violation because you could cover this with it's already illegal to commit murder.
Yeah.
First or second degree. Why do you
Right.
need it? And they also use that same rationale to say there is no such thing as a hate crime. Why do we need specific
Yeah.
legislation,
Yeah.
right, that increases penalties if, quote, animus,
Yeah.
racial animus was involved? So they
Yeah.
deny that there's anything such as a hate crime.
Yeah, I mean, really, I mean, do we believe in piling on? Even in the NFL, we throw a flag when you pile on. You can't pile on just
The
because you're
thing that I found
racist.
the thing that I found most ridiculous is that adding hate crime, right,
Mm,
penalties
mm.
only added 3 to 5 years. So
Yeah,
what's
yeah, it
you
wasn't.
know,
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
wasn't that much.
it's not double it. If you want to double it, then I would say, okay, well, that's pretty good, right?
All right, so now I took us on a tangent here, but on the war criminal thing, it looks like Admiral Bradley, who was thrown under the bus by Hegseth,
Hegseth and
he's
Trump.
and Trump, and he seems to have like said, okay, there was no kill 'em all type of order, and everyone seems happy with Hegseth and Trump now after Bradley spoke, and yet, there's something wrong about this whole thing, and the question is Hegseth really in or is he out? I mean, why is it that this is such an abnormal presidency? At any time in the past, a president or a politician would be sunk with all the things that are coming out about Hegseth, his personal life, this thing with the Caribbean boats, and then now we have this IG report on Signalgate saying, yeah, he really compromised or potentially compromised, American lives, American soldiers. I this would normally sink an ordinary politician, but Hegseth emerges. I mean, I think Trump, by backing Hegseth, has created a Terminator. He's made Hegseth into the Terminator, where you can't sink him. You can't. Yeah, and just like Trump has given off some of his uh, is it Teflon? Some of his attributes on Hegseth. He's creating a monster, and mostly because Hegseth is so loyal and reflects back everything that Trump says. Um, who would have thought that this is how American political ambition would be realized? Just adopt the negative side, and you're good. But that's the Republican Party right now, right?
I don't think people. I disagree with your position on the reaction to Admiral Bradley's
Yeah, you think
statement.
some people? Well, it's mixed, and not everyone is saying
Yeah,
get Hegseth.
it is
Get
mixed, but it's also partisan, right?
yeah,
The Republicans are trying to use it as a cleanup, and it's not working for people with common sense.
mhm,
The Democrats are still going to be very dogged in attacking this. And then the thing that's going to keep it in the news and keep it up front is the fact that Trump is still pushing, right, the sedition charges against the Democrats, who
oh yeah,
warned everyone that you need to be careful. That members of the military must not obey illegal orders. Okay,
yeah,
and so that's going to get thrown in front of the Supreme Court, which is, eventually it's going to have to go before military tribunals and then the Supreme Court, and let's see what happens. But I just if you have any hope in the Supreme Court, you really have to be kind of stupid, you know. Uh,
well, it's true,
look,
but
look, the best it gets is 5-4. That's the best it gets, and
oh,
that's
and
only
5-4
when.
for Trump, 5-4 for
Yes,
Trump, and
exactly.
so
That's the
yeah,
best that
five,
it gets. It's a loser all the way down around, and that only happens with great infrequency. Okay,
yeah,
most of the time it's been 6-3.
hmm,
Okay, and so forget the SCOTUS. I don't think
yeah,
that's where it's going to go. Also, even if SCOTUS makes decisions that say you got to stop, and if they
yeah,
don't stop, who's going to enforce that? Who's
right.
going to enforce the law? Okay,
So
when the Republicans own everything right now, Trump's orders matter more than anything in the law, anything in the Constitution. That's what's going on, and it's been happening.
yeah,
Okay,
and so the autocracy is real
it's real.
until
We're here. We've
yeah,
been
we're
here.
here. The dictatorship, the autocracy is real until voters decide, yeah, with the midterm, at least get some Democrats in there and let Congress act as a legislative body, as a separate branch of government. And because right now, the Congress has abdicated its
Yes.
role.
I
It's
think the
abdicated its
Democrats.
role.
We could use Hegseth as an example. I think the Democrats got to really push hard. Okay,
Mhm,
my question to Congress, particularly if they win a majority next year. Okay,
mhm,
my question
mhm.
to the Democrats is: will you go after Hegseth, and will you go for impeachment for of at least two of the justices of the Supreme Court? Are you going to take strong actions like that? Okay.
Oh, wait,
Um,
wait. I guess the Supreme Court is impeachable. I mean,
yes,
the judge,
yes.
because I never hear that come up as impeach the justices. Never hear that. I hear
Well,
pad the the court, or grow the court. I
well,
hear.
Joe Biden said nix to padding the court, to expanding the court by four or
Yeah,
five more members. He
yeah,
said no, I'm not even considering that.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, but impeachment of justices, and there's ample evidence that the justices, some of the justices, a couple, are compromised.
Openly corrupt,
Yeah,
politically
yeah.
biased, and openly corrupt. Okay.
All right, so we're going to have this war criminal administration. So Hegseth in, out. He's probably going to
They
be
got
in.
to
He's safe.
the Democrats have to launch an investigation, right?
Mm,
And literally arrest him. And who can
yeah,
arrest him? They can force Capitol Police to arrest him. Just say, look at if you come on to Capitol grounds, okay, we're slamming you in jail. Simple
yeah.
as that.
All right, so now the big story over the holiday was the shooting. The Afghan national who worked side by side with the CIA. Who knows what happened? He's being charged, murder, um, the fallout. The Afghan community is feeling it, but also all immigrants. The Somalis are feeling it.
Yes, yes. He's even
And
talking
this,
about Somalis. Now, one of the
yeah.
what do you think his motivation is?
Well, I mean,
Besides
number one,
Afghans.
yeah. Well, it's real. I mean, the story is real. It's not. It's not a fake
Which part of the
story.
story is real? That it was an Afghan, right, who
Oh,
came, who worked with the CIA for 10 years or so,
yeah,
right? Came here, and it's also real that he was given asylee status,
yeah.
okay,
Right, right. But I
in
wasn't
April.
talking. But I wasn't talking about the Afghan. I was talking about the Somali story is real. The story of Somalis in Minnesota, uh, as one of the it's one of the aftermath stories that has come out. That has given Trump reason to be, well, it's fueled his xenophobia, let's say, against the Somalis. But what's your point about the Somali situation? Um, I mean, my point is there. It's some Somalis in Minnesota were involved in some corrupt activities, perhaps,
Yes.
and let's see what happens. But it's like so Jeffrey Epstein is a pedophile, or all white people pedophiles? I mean, the leap to go from all the Somalis are bad, all immigrants are bad, get them out. We don't want them in our country. That's pretty extreme, and that's wrong. But
Well,
what?
that's basically where I'm at. That's
Yeah,
basically where I'm at. I mean,
yeah,
the corruption in Ukraine is
oh
giving
yeah,
Zelensky problems. Okay, and
yeah,
that was there before Zelensky. It was one of the major reasons that the EU was not really warm to accepting Ukraine into the
yeah,
EU way before, even before the 2014 attack by Russia on Ukraine. But
yeah.
when they showed that unwillingness, right,
Mhm.
to deal with Ukraine in that fashion, that was a green light for
Yeah.
Putin.
Yeah,
Okay, and
since you mentioned Ukraine, it's in the news because Putin says he's not accepting any of
no,
the.
and who would expect that he would?
Yeah, no, I don't think anyone did, but it brings us back to where we are with what's Zelensky to do? He's got no choice but to either accept a surrender or keep fighting. I mean, it's bad. I think, and I just don't know where we are with the Ukraine story, because uh, Donald Trump seems to be, and his envoy all seem to be pushing pushing Putin talking points, and where does that leave us with Ukraine going into the fourth year now?
I think there's every possibility that Ukraine's going to lose.
Yeah,
Every possibility that Ukraine's going to lose. They're they're up to their elder statesmen now on the front lines, and some of these
yeah,
people have done 4, 5, 6 tours. They're low on ammo, and really it comes down to Trump. If Trump had given them medium and long range missiles, we wouldn't be in this situation right now.
yeah. Well, the Ukraine is losing losing the war, the drone war. If
Yeah,
they had better weaponry, maybe they could turn it around. But I go back to the beginning of this whole crisis when everyone was wearing their little Ukrainian flags,
sure.
and I was eating more every time I go to New York. I was eating a veselka, eating my borscht, and eating my potato pancakes. They'd make them vegan for. I mean, everyone was around. Just
Rallying.
rallied around Ukraine, and now Ukraine is like, yeah, what's the price of eggs? What's the price of beef? Well, they're not talking about Ukraine, and that's a sad thing that the American people, hearts and minds, lost. I think.
Well, do you remember a place called Vietnam?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah, and we settled for that, didn't we?
yeah. Well, it's true. I mean, the bad guys won, and the good guys got asylum in
The bad guys
Alexandria,
won
Virginia.
because the good guys waged a weak war. Okay,
Yeah.
didn't know what the hell they were doing. And a lot of that has to do with racism and the way they look at non-white people. That's the
So what?
danger of the
What did?
attack on the Somalis and the Afghans. This is not just an attack on those two groups. This is an attack on all people of color. The same way that attacks on African Americans way back in the day, previous to
Yeah.
civil rights, that was about people of color. We
Yeah.
all had to
Yeah.
keep our heads down just so
Yeah.
we look at all of the people who in our own communities who rejected any kind of identification with the civil rights movement. They
Yeah.
thought, why don't those people, they just want a free ride. I used to hear that all the time at the dinner
Yeah.
table, man.
Well,
Filipinos,
yeah.
Chinese.
And this is the thing about Pete Hegseth. He's given affirmative action a bad name because here's white affirmative action, and the
Uh,
incompetent Pete Hegseth is there. Yeah, incompetent. I mean, he's given affirmative action a bad name. I mean, it's incredible.
yeah,
But to your point about the whole thing, the overall picture is really of the browning of America, right?
it
The
is.
browning of him, and so Trump is got to hold forth and say, no, no, look at this, look at what happens. We let these brown people in, and even the good ones, look at what they do. They're corrupt, they're no good, and we got to keep them all out. Well, what are we going to do with all the corrupt white people? You know, and I guess an ancillary question is, how about the Ukrainians? They're not, they're white. I mean, I see them. When I visited my mom in the senior housing, public housing, I'd see the Russians. I see the Russian immigrants. I see Ukrainian immigrants. What do you how does your criticism or your assessment, fly with the whites coming in? They're the good ones. They're the
Yeah,
good ones, right? They're the
I
good ones.
yeah, well, I remember when the Russians started coming in,
Yeah.
during the Gorbachev era,
Yeah.
and I said, okay, here we go. Uh, at first, it was Russian Jews, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then, because they're the most persecuted, and then it was just Russians, right? And they started settling in the Richmond district here in San Francisco. And I said, well, let's see what their culture is like because it'll be represented in what restaurants they go to, right? They're going to set up their own restaurants, right? And we'll see if they have gangster warlords that,
Yeah.
that rule those restaurants, right? So you can tell, right? right on Clement Street. And so I'd drive up and down Clement Street and see what they started. And sure enough, man, there'd be some of the biggest, baddest dudes you ever saw in your life standing in front, two of them at least, right? And you
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
okay, well, somebody big is in there, okay? And then you look for what kind of businesses they start. And then for me, you look at the high schools and see how their kids behave. And
Oh, how
if
do
you
the kids
start
behave?
seeing mafiosi type kids saying, you know who my dad is, that kind of shit, right?
Oh,
You
yeah,
knew what we're in for. Well, that's
yeah.
exactly what happened. Okay.
Did it? Oh, yeah. Well, this is the thing. I didn't know. All right. We're dealing with some complicated issues here.
Yeah, it's a
So, all
lot of
right.
stuff that most Americans don't care about because they don't think it affects them, right? But then
Yeah.
when their kid gets threatened by some Russian kid, right? Or when
Mhm.
people in college start saying things like, "What all the Russians want is they want back what always was theirs," and I say, "Well, wait a minute. So your position is that they always owned Ukraine, that Ukraine was really only it was all part of Russia, right?" So
Mhm.
I said, "Well, why then do they have a separate language?" you know,
Right.
if
Well,
why, how did
th-
that happen? How did
this is
they develop
why
a separate culture?
when I point out the Russian-Ukraine war, I talk about the U.S. Philippine war, and I say, the U.S. is in the role of Russia, and the Philippines is in the role of Ukraine, a sovereign nation, their own, identity, their own culture, and people, have to stop themselves and think, oh wait, Emil's making sense here. He's not just telling jokes; he's making sense here. So, all right. So we added Ukraine to our list, and let's see what happens with Putin saying, "I'm not accepting these terms," and what's going to happen with Zelensky. Someone's got to say, "Let's arm Ukraine and let's have them finish the war." But well, we'll see if that happens. You wanted to talk about a nursing
Oh
situation.
man,
What is
yeah.
the what's
Well, it
happening
was
in
part of the
nursing?
big beautiful bill. It was
Yeah.
part of the big beautiful bill. I'm going to go right back to Project 2025 because it was in
Yeah.
there. Okay, they're going to
Hmm.
cut back on all these programs, and
Hmm.
because they see them as high cost, right? So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
their whole thing is we're cutting down the size of government to save money for the American people.
Hmm.
Okay, and one of the ways that they want to do that is redefining nursing among other professions, right?
Hmm.
Nursing. The reason I'm picking nursing, it should be obvious to Filipinos, right? Um, because it reduces their eligibility for federal grants for education, right? Graduate
Hmm.
school level education for medical professionals, right?
Hmm.
To 50%. In other
Hmm.
words, where the maximum available to them as science professionals was $200,000. Okay,
Hmm.
the maximum available to them now is $100,000.
Ooh.
So then what you need to do is look at what graduate school costs, particularly in the sciences, and see whether or not that $100,000 is likely to support someone through 3 or 4 years of graduate school education for nursing, sans sans specialization, right? Like other areas of the medical and science professionals,
Mhm.
there are specializations. So we're
Yeah.
just talking about a basic RN degree at this point, right? Is 100,000 likely to be able to support people of the working class and even of the middle class when it's costing between 35 and $60,000 per year, right?
For a
Depending on
nursing
which
degree.
institutions. Yes,
Wow. So you're spending almost $200,000 to be an
that's
RN.
the reason the $200,000 was chosen as a maximum. Okay, because that's what it costs. Okay, my dentist is also a professor at UCSF, right?
Mhm.
And she told me she's still paying off her
Oh
graduate
yeah.
school.
Well, so how is this going to impact the Filipinos and other Asians and
They're not going to go. How are they going to be able to afford to send their kids to nursing school? Because nursing has always been one of those things that people have encouraged. Parents have encouraged their kids. We're into a third generation,
yeah.
and if you measure it by the Philippine standard, we're into a fifth generation of people
Yeah.
being encouraged to get into nursing and the medical professionals.
Yeah, I mean, Richard Speck in Chicago didn't stop them in the '60s, but
Yeah. Oh boy, you're gonna raise that.
yeah. All
Okay,
right, I
you gotta
forgot to
have to
raise
clarify.
it.
Well, people are not gonna know who the hell Speck was, right, and what he did. But
Yeah,
he killed a whole group of nurses, and the majority of them were Filipino immigrant nurses that were brought in by what would now be an H-1B visa,
yeah.
right? You know,
In the '60s, it
in the
happened, and
'60s.
I remember as a young child, I didn't know they were Filipinos. I just knew it was mass murder, and mass murders were not a thing yet in America. That's one of the big ones that I
That's why it
mentioned.
was so shocking. Yes,
Yeah,
that's one of the reasons it was so
and I
shocking.
only mention it now, kind not really in jest, but as it never stopped Filipinos from coming in. At the very you want to talk about generations of Filipinos coming in to be nurses. That thing did not hinder Filipinos from saying, "Yeah, I want to, go to the U.S. and be a nurse."
In the 1920s, okay, after 1924, particularly when the rest of the Asians were shut out of the
Hmm.
United States. They could no longer immigrate to the United States.
Right.
The one exception was Filipinos, and the reason was the American flag was flying over the Philippines. It was a
Right.
territorial protectorate of the United States. But when people started coming in masse in the 1920s, right,
Hmm.
there was heavy
Hmm.
racist reaction against them. All kinds of
Hmm.
restrictions on what they could and could not do. And so the Philippine government actually put out a warning to people who are applying to come here to the United States, warning them that that there's problems there, that they're mistreating Filipinos, right?
Hmm.
People are having living under very harsh circumstances, but that didn't stop anything
Yeah.
because life was still going to be better. It was worth the risk. Besides that, Filipinos wanted adventure. They didn't want to get stuck
Yeah.
back on the farm,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so they were going to come. Same
Isn't
thing is
that the
true now.
phrase?
If is
Isn't
Are things better here than they would be if they stayed back in the Philippines? Now, there is an interesting phenomenon though, right? But over the last 20 years, people of the rather limited upper middle class sector, they have returned to the Philippines
right? They're
or
going
they have
back.
yes, or they have become binational. They go back and forth,
Because
right?
because pesos go farther than dollars.
Hey, that's a dream that a lot of even the Manung generation had. They
Oh
dreamt
yeah,
that
yeah,
they were going to be able to go back. They planned for it. They bought land, right?
yeah.
They
I get
allowed family to live in the properties,
yeah.
and then
I
they
get
expected to go
relatives.
back and be able to enjoy their golden years in retirement.
Yeah, I get relatives who did that, and they came back. They came here, worked, got their pensions in dollars, went back, and I guess they're happy, but they're not. They're if they were American a little bit, now they're Filipino 100%, and I don't know if that's good or bad. I think sometimes they miss America.
Sometimes, yeah, they they say it's too hot.
Yeah, yeah,
They that's one of the major complaints. They say it's too hot. I know families who have returned to the United
yeah.
States. They've come back, and the major
Oh,
reason is the rest of their family has always got their hand out.
yeah. Oh, yeah,
They're
well, there's
always looking
that.
for support from the Canos. They're
Yeah,
treated as Americans.
yeah. The Canos, Canos,
Yep,
Americanos. Yeah,
that's
the
right.
Canos. Well, that's the thing, I did what I can when I went there. I let them sleep in my aircon hotel, and and they
You
loved
took
it.
the aircon bus. The aircon bus.
Aircon, aircon, yeah, they loved it.
Mhm.
All right, so what's going to save the? I guess we're going to see fewer Filipinos become nurses, huh?
That might be the effect, but once again, it depends on what the Democrats do when and if they take at least the lower house. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on. I just caught this morning. A friend of mine, Scott Kurshigi, he's a friend. He's a part of the Grace Lee Boggs. He's the president of the Grace Lee Boggs Foundation. He's speaking in Berkeley on Friday and Saturday, I believe. But he was commenting on Rachel Maddow's Burn Order, a podcast she's doing, kind of a true crimey kind of podcast, and it concentrates on these lesser known figures in the Japanese internment story, these white politicians who spoke up for the Japanese and were seen as heroes, but they were eventually not. it wasn't the prevailing view because and I see it as a journalist mining history for the white parts in order to I don't for an audience that doesn't know anything about the internment, but as a Filipino American, Asian American journalist who's covered aspects of the internment story, I concentrated mostly on like Korematsu, right, and the Supreme Court case, and Dale Manami, the San Francisco lawyer who fought to reverse the Korematsu decision, and I was sort of surprised at this telling by Maddo. I've only seen her plug it on her show, but I was wondering, the criticism of Kurashige, my acquaintance, my friend, is that Rachel Maddow was doing the good guy, bad guy approach, the good guy, bad guy framework, which is easy to understand. It's a kind of a journalistic format. And I guess for some people who don't know about the internment, it does help make it understandable that maybe there were some good whites back then, who weren't for the internment. It wasn't like you know, every all the whites were against the internment. What's your take on the idea of burn order and bringing it back again? Because I thought when I first heard about it, I thought, oh, it's interesting. MS now they call it is concentrating or letting her talk about the internment. But is it a now issue? I mean, should we be fearing mass incarcerations? Maybe that's sort of the reason that makes it relevant.
That is the reason that it makes it relevant. Is how far will we go? Will it become mass incarceration? And they're attempting mass incarceration. That's
Mm-hmm.
exactly the point. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
they do have some kind of quota, right? They're I mean, they were talking about 3,000 people a month, or
Yeah.
I heard a week, a month. It's ridiculous, right? Ridiculous to have that kind of quota. You don't have enough people to do that, and you don't have enough people to places to be able to hold them. But nonetheless, it is a concern. It is a goal. It is one of their goals, not
Mm-hmm.
only of this administration, but of people who support the administration beyond Trump. That's the
Mm-hmm.
problem. That's the nature of the problem. So it's okay to raise it. You raise an important criticism. I think it's criticism, and that is that there are the so-called, as you put it, lesser known. Okay, for people familiar with the 1970s and early 80s development, right, of redress and reparations. And I was in law school when this started. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I was I was at Hastings, now UC Law, San
Mm-hmm.
Francisco, between 74 and 77, and people in my class were already working on this. And the thing that upset me was not only that she was featuring all of this stuff done by white folks, and some of it's legit. I mean, for example, the investigations and the break-in to a Japanese consulate to be able to get information that showed that they weren't able to recruit Japanese Americans to their cause. Okay, it's one of the reasons that there was a major, let's say, there was a huge disparity between the very popular perspective that Japanese Americans, right, were
Mm-hmm.
spying for Imperial Japanese government, right,
Mm-hmm.
and the reality, which is they couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
And so, what the extreme right said at that point was the reason they can't find anything is because you know how sneaky these people are. They went
Yeah.
right back to the old
That,
generic
yeah.
Asians are
Racism. Yeah.
sneaky.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the thing is, there were some people who spoke out, but they lost, and so you have this good guy, bad guy framework. I guess it's a nice storytelling technique, as it makes people think, especially if you're talking to a basically white liberal audience, that oh, there were some good people amongst us who fought this and stood up, but ultimately, Korematsu, there were people who stood up, and it was Dale Manami and his group of Asian American lawyers, right?
Well, yeah, and they were uh, very effective. However, the
Mm.
reason that I think Peter Irons and his
Yeah.
cohort are important is because they had uh, constitutional and SCOTUS credibility. They had Supreme Court credibility because they had long histories of working on civil rights issues. Okay,
Right.
so that was very helpful because back then, even Dale wasn't very old. I mean, he had just
Yeah.
finished his bar, maybe 50. He had maybe a dozen, 12 years, 12 to
Mm.
14 years experience and stuff. Okay,
Yeah.
and he was one of the elders.
Yeah.
Everybody else, all of the young lawyers, right, were in my age category, and they were in
Mm.
their 30s.
See,
So
see, yeah.
they're really young. The other
I
thing
mean,
that bothered
yeah.
me was that she doesn't mention the fact that it was not only Japanese Americans that
Right.
were involved in that. There, a lot of my classmates, right, were
Mm.
directly involved. Chinese Americans and
Right.
some Filipino Americans as well.
Yeah, I think the thing that got me when I heard it, I was wondering, why is MS now doing this now? I mean, what's the new thing? And the new thing isn't new at all. It's like shining a light on some lesser names, mostly white, who stood up against, the bad government that wanted these people incarcerated. But it doesn't really, I mean, I guess it shows. I mean, an African American friend of mine was wondering about some of the things that MS Now is doing about black people. Like, we didn't know this before. He was saying, my friend, but now the whites have discovered black history, or they have discovered, the black perspective, and they're showing it, and in a way, it's not a negative whitewash, it's a good whitewash, in the sense that maybe it expands, right, the people who get it now, right? I mean, really, I've had more than one or two black activists come up to me and say, wow, this is something. They're telling the black story, and now it's real, for some people.
I don't
the
know.
the,
I don't
the
think they've been watching.
positive
I don't.
whitewash.
Well, I'll tell you. They were not watching any MSNBC. Even the old MSNBC, because they had more black talent, right?
Oh
Anchors
yeah.
than
I look,
than
I'm not.
than
I'm not.
CNN, everybody else, and those people were given the permission to tell the
Mhm.
black story. They featured, Project 1719, all that,
Yeah, 16,
1619.
19.
They
Well, they
did
got
all
and
1619. They did all
yeah,
that, you
and they
know.
got Sharpton. Look, I'm not dissing. I'm not dissing MSNBC or
No, no.
MS
What
now.
we're saying,
How?
you're saying that African Americans themselves are just starting to notice that they've done that, and that's because MSNBC was. I mean, why did NBC cut them loose?
Yeah. Well, that's another question. I mean, they're on their own. They're kind of like free floating. I mean, why are they still using MS? I mean, MS is Microsoft. Is
Microsoft, yeah, that's
I
right.
mean, is Microsoft even, part of their
Right.
thing? I remember when they started MSNBC, and was this bridge of tech and, the old mainstream, and now
Yeah, that's
they
right.
might as well call themselves something else, but they want the legacy to exist, so that they have they have credibility amongst their own folks,
Right.
their fans, but MS now I don't know. Anyway, all right. So burn order. I haven't listened to. I've only seen Rachel Maddow plug it. Um,
Yeah, I've listened
but
to it. I listened to
I
the first two.
I was curious. So worth checking out.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it's nice short chapters, short episodes.
Yeah,
It's something you can listen to in the car.
yeah,
It's good. I mean, it's decent journalism. I agree with the criticism on perspective.
mm.
That's a legitimate criticism. I join people in that position, but it's worth it. You know.
Yeah. It's worth. I mean, it's not all white people were evil. Is sort of like the takeaway. There were some good
Yeah,
guys.
that is it. That
There's some good
there's a lot of
guys.
people, a lot of lesser knowns. I you know the whole thing that Minami et al. Were into was a cooperative endeavor. Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
uh, some of my former students were also part of that, and they're Filipino American.
yeah.
Bill Tamayo is a good example of that, and Bill has gotten a lot of cred for all kinds of work that he's done,
Mm,
but mostly as a regional manager and a director for the EEOC. You know,
right,
but he
right.
was also part of that younger group of students and lawyers that were heavily involved in the redress and reparations movement.
Well, I think where I was reading about Scott Kuroshige's his critique really involves how we look back at Asian American history, how this somehow
Okay.
changes, that it's not that it's more cooperative than we think that
Yep.
it's expands time, so it's not just Dale Manami and his crew coming in at the end to overturn Korematsu, but it was a slowly evolving sense that ultimately overturned Korematsu. And then you have to go into the Norm Mineta era of,
Right.
of reparations, right? Getting reparations
Right.
through Reagan, right?
Right.
It was the Reagan administration,
Yeah.
and that's how I got into the story. I worked for uh, then Congressman Mineta after he did that historic reparations, the Civil Liberties Act, and
Yeah.
but you got if you go way back, you get to the Maddow shining the light on those folks. Anyway, a couple more things before we leave. I was bothered by a it's a new not new. It was an AP story on about a survey. Lost generation of news consumers. Survey shows how teenagers dislike news media. And
84%. 84%.
yeah, I mean, it's like they asked people 13 to 18 about journalism, and most of them, they find news news media journalism biased, crazy,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
boring, fake,
Yep.
bad, depressing, confusing, scary. They don't trust it, and they don't know what journalism is about. As a former journalism professor, I'm a little dismayed by what I'm hearing and seeing, because journalism is the fourth estate. I mean, I don't know, and the
And
thing is that
it still is,
it's
despite the
still
fact that the majority of Americans distrust journalism for one reason or another.
yes,
It's not just the younger folk. It
yeah,
what makes this problematic is they represent the future.
yeah,
That's what makes it problematic. What makes it problematic is the fact that the numbers are so high, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
this is not at all surprising to me. In the last 5 years that I was teaching up until 2022,
mm,
there was a constant problem. In
yeah,
fact, in the after 2010, okay,
mm, mm,
I started asking as an entry point to my class on law and politics in American society, right? How are you informed? That's my entry question. Was how are you informed? And of course I said any kind of source of information, anything. Just give me a
mm,
list. And then I accumulated the list to show which way they were informed and how they were informed, how well they were informed, right? Less than 5% of each class, and sometimes I had 120 people in
mm,
each section, okay?
mm,
Sometimes I taught two of those sections. That was hell. That was a lot of
mm,
people.
yeah,
But only less than 5% ever picked mainstream stuff like PBS or New York Times or LA, right?
mm,
Or any
mm,
of the big papers. That
mm.
less than 5%.
Yeah.
Okay.
What were they picking? What were they picking?
Instagram,
Mm,
even early, Facebook, when yeah,
Snapchat, yeah,
Snapchat. Well, yeah,
or
right. But
Twitter, Twitter.
Instagram was the biggie. I would say Instagram didn't exist when I started using this question, right, as my
Mm,
entry question. But as soon as Instagram started, it got really popular. At first, it was just entertainment value,
Yeah.
And then with Gaza, particularly, this is even before the October 7th massacres,
Yeah.
right, and kidnappings. Gaza was a big deal, and Netanyahu's abuses were a big deal, and that was because people went to Instagram and they were seeing video
Yeah. Oh,
of
well,
what was happening in
well,
Gaza.
you see, the thing is about social media. It's easy to say, "Oh, social media all bad," but these are these are replacements for original sources, and so
Yes,
people think that, oh, we're getting a direct source.
yes,
Sometimes that's the problem.
yes.
Sometimes it is, and
And
sometimes it
sometimes it's
isn't.
fake.
Sometimes it's AI generated fakery. Sometimes it's propaganda.
Yeah,
No
it's
one knows.
propaganda. They cite old news. They cite
Yeah,
old news. Remember that? And who was doing that? It was
yeah,
Trump that was doing that. Even
right.
during his first administration, he was doing that. He would say, "Look at they're celebrating 9/11. You
Yeah,
know, they're out there celebrating 9/11." And he was
right,
using old footage from some rally that was in another country, and he's
right.
claiming that, well, this is in New Jersey. You know, this is right
Yeah.
across from New York City,
This,
where you know.
and this is the value of journalism as the filter, as the professional sorter outer of fact, and yet it is so discredited now. And you look at those numbers. I remember when I was a teenager during the Watergate years. People wanted to be journalists because of Woodward and Bernstein, right?
And they
Because
want and they wanted to be lawyers too.
yeah, they wanted to be, and they wanted to get at the truth. They knew that this
Yep.
was their role in government. Without being in government, you were a watchdog. There was a value, and now we have journalists or teenagers who diss journalism, and I don't know what they want. I don't. I really, I'm at a loss. Journalism is not the answer, but maybe is there a new journalism that comes up, or is it just they want to deal with it on their own? Everything is on their own. They'll make their
You
own
know what?
choice.
You know what they want? They want the same thing that the majority of Americans want. They want real action. They, if you're going to talk about a problem, don't just describe the problem. Talk about how you're going to deal with the problem.
Mhm, mhm.
Actually organize around some political or social activity that bring, that's what they like, right? I mean,
Yeah.
doing demonstrations and things like that. They join in those kinds of things. They join in protests, all right? But when you look at who is going to journalistic affairs or
Mhm,
events, right?
mhm.
Journalistic events where there's a number of journalists talking as panels and as individuals, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
At symposia and things like that. It's old people.
Yeah.
It's older people. It's
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
obvious that the average age is probably somewhere around 60,
Yeah. Yeah,
at those
I hate
events.
to say that. I hate to say that because old is relative. I still manage to be 10 or 20 years older or younger. I still manage to be 10 or 20 years younger than some of my audience members, but when my audience members are 80, that's not so great. That's not so great. You know. I had
Yeah, look at the reason I used old people and old folks are older is because
Mm,
we're looking at it from the relative position of younger people. Okay,
yeah.
we're
Yeah.
looking at it. We're talking about teenagers here, but you
Yeah.
could apply this the results of this survey all
Mm.
the way up until 30 years old.
Yeah. Oh
Remember,
yeah, yeah.
remember back in the 60s, in the early 70s, when people said you can't trust anybody over 30 years old, and I
We're,
was laughing.
we're
I was laughing because a lot of people who were saying that shit were like 25. So
well,
it's only going to be 5 years to because before they became distrustful.
where are we now? Don't trust anyone over.
18.
Is that it? Well, yeah. I'll tell
If
you
they're old
something.
enough to vote, if they're old enough to vote in federal elections, you can't trust them, man.
You, that's something because I learned all about Gen Alpha from watching South Park. You know, because I don't know Gen Alpha. I know I made millennials. I know Gen X. I
made
know
you
Gen.
you made them.
I made millennials. I know them. I know Gen Z. Not so
You
sure.
have
Well, I
you
maybe
had
some
just
Gen Z.
self-deified. You have self-deified. You are
Yeah,
now God. Yeah,
yeah.
you made them. Okay.
I made the millennials. Yes, and then but
You
Gen.
were a 50% contributor.
That's
Okay.
right. Well,
Yeah.
all right,
Okay.
all right. I was a co-contributor, but the Gen Alphas, I don't know. So I got to watch South Park to discover that my Beanie Babies have been replaced by Labubus.
Yeah, and Labubu's on the way out, man. I mean,
Labubu's on the way out. Oh, okay, all right. So
well, you said you watched South Park. They're making fun of Labubu craze like crazy, man.
well, actually, something in South Park, and this is journalistic related story. CNN has well, South Park has made fun of the predictive apps, the betting apps,
Right, right.
and you bet, and the betting apps have helped sports sites. They bet on the sports sites and sports news,
You're talking about
ESPN.
Polymarket.
Yeah, well, now CNN is partnering with Kalshi, which is
Oh, Kalshi's the other, yeah, the
yeah,
other.
predictive app.
They were the
And
legitimate. They're legitimate because they applied for a license. Kalshi is legitimate in the U.S.
yeah,
Right now, Polymarket is verboten. You're not supposed to. U.S.
eh,
people aren't supposed to do it. But all you got
right.
to do is use your VPN, man. All you got
Yeah,
to do.
but Kalshi is also legitimate because it's like a market. It's like trading on the Nasdaq or something. I mean,
Yeah,
it's for of ideas, and it's scary. It's scary that it's like that because, but when you combine that with news, this is the problem when news can't find a way to make money. It's not advertising. How do you get young people to watch the news? Maybe you make it all a betting proposition. When is Trump going to say this? When is the Fed going to do that? When is inflation going up or down? And you can
if you
bet
want to
on.
attract young women, you talk about independence and responsibility, especially among males. And if you want to attract young males, just get porn. Just
Just
put
get
porn
porn.
on. Yeah,
Well, and that's not
just
that
go
much different.
Epstein, man.
That's not much different from the old days when they put a sexy anchor man or a sexy anchor woman, on there, and they get leg shots of them standing, so you get to see them full bodied instead of
Yeah,
hiding
yeah,
behind a
yeah,
desk. I mean
yeah.
that's all news porn, but that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, oh boy, that's what news is. I mean, when I read that CNN was partnering with Kalshi. I said, "What? I mean, the news is not enough. The news is not enough in
Nope,
America, Dan.
nope,
The news is not
no,
enough."
yeah.
Hey, all right. So let's shift gears. One last final topic. I mention this because the deadline date is December 7th for open enrollment to Medicare, and since
Oh yeah.
we've identified that some of us are of age, um, and people want Medicare for all, but what is Medicare for all? What would it really look like? It would look more like Medicare plus your Medigap supplement. That's what you should get. You should not get Medicare Advantage. Medicare Advantage advantages the
Yeah.
corporations
Just
and
think
does
of it
not.
as disadvantage.
Yeah, yeah, don't yeah, right. Don't even think. I mean, but a lot of people have been hoodwinked
And
by
then yeah,
Medicare
they sign up for
Advantage,
it.
and they
Yep,
sign up for it, and because number one, generally it's free. It's no premium
yep.
because they sock it to you later. A friend of mine was in a hospital and it did cover ambulance service, but he needed ambulance service that would take him a long way. It did cover it, but I asked him, "Did you have, what is your supplement? Because you got to get a supplement. You got to get the Medigap supplement." He said, "I just got Advantage." Advantage. Oh man, and Advantage is not an advantage. If it's got the word advantage in it, run away. Right, no matter how good it looks. Remember that if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Medicare Advantage is one of those things. And take it from me as someone who is I'm licensed to sell insurance. I don't sell Advantage. But brokers I know that I've dealt with have always tried to get me to sell Advantage because they say, "Hey, you'll make
It
more
makes
money."
money. It's money.
It's a moneymaker for
It's money.
money makers for the healthcare industry and for the sellers
I got
and for the
students
brokers.
who are also licensed. I held a license myself for a
Mm,
while,
mm.
okay, but not because I wanted to sell insurance, because I wanted to trade. I wanted, because you can get 6 and 7, right? The license 6 and 7, and you
Oh
can
yeah, yeah,
trade SEC. So that's
yeah,
why I was doing it. But
yeah.
but
Well,
my own former students who have done quite well,
mm,
okay, as insurance agents, never never even talk to me about advantage or any of that kind of stuff because they
yeah.
know I'd slap them down in a second. I mean, they're not that foolish, man.
Well,
You know?
the person who really got me, who hated Advantage, was Ralph Nader. And if Ralph Nader is against Advantage, well, that's good enough for me. But then
Yeah,
John
but
Oliver.
he beat up on the '66 Corvair, man. That was
Oh,
all
he did.
wrong.
He did. Yeah, yeah. He
That
did.
was all
Well,
wrong.
that rear engine car. Yeah, yeah.
Oh man,
But
that
but
was all wrong. That was a
but
great year. You know how much those things are worth nowadays? Thanks,
uh,
Ralph.
how much?
Oh, 100,000,
Wow, for
200,000.
a Corvair.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a
Well, all right.
66 for a '66 particularly.
Yeah. Well, they look kind of cool. The rear
They
engine,
are cool.
but you know. Oh, well,
Yeah, but
anyway.
a friend of mine in high school got one in our senior year, and
Yeah.
it was wonderful. It was a convertible too,
Yeah.
so we
Oh,
put
yeah.
that
Those
thing
are
down
cool.
and ride around.
Hey, I was more into the six. I had a '67 Mustang when I was in high school,
Right
and that
on,
was cool. That was cool
right
until
on.
it
That's
it
cool.
blew up. It had a wiring problem, and my friend who knew cars bought my burnt out '67 Mustang. I bought it used. I sold it to him for like practically a song. He took it and he was able to rewire it, and it ran for like the next 25 years. Ah, and
Yeah,
that got
I
it.
I didn't make those kinds of mistakes. I have made mistakes, but
Yeah.
not like that.
All right, but don't make a mistake like buying Medicare Advantage. If
No,
you're
man.
here's the thing, it's the open market closes on December 7th, and if you started with Medicare Advantage and want to switch, now you have to go through underwriting,
That's right.
and if you had any problems, you may not qualify, or you may get a better. You may not, because if you do it the first time you're eligible, they have to take you. And that's why first timers, when they go to Medicare Advantage, because they say, I'm healthy, it's cheap, I'm going to do it. No, go with the supplement and go with regular Medicare. In the long run, it'll be better. So,
Oh yeah. Well, they would find out
anyway,
real
all right. So,
real fast that sometimes you're one of the most immediate disadvantages of
mm,
advantage is
mm.
that your out of pocket goes up.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Your per
yeah,
visit
it
goes up.
goes up. You end up paying more ultimately when you get sick and when you need it, and you don't get as much as you would have if you were with regular Medicare. So they try to make it sound like, oh, it's convenient, one stop shop, but not necessarily. I mean, sometimes Kaiser is good. I mean, Kaiser has a Medicare Advantage plan. It's an HMO, and HMOs have Advantage, and they're selling Kaiser's selling Advantage like crazy. But and not maybe some Advantage programs are better than others, but I doubt it. I doubt it.
All right,
Anyway,
dude.
all right. So there's the Medicare Advantage talk. So Dan, uh, hopefully, I I'm going to be doing this thing at the Marsh on the 15th. I'm going to talk about Christmas. I'm also let's see, it's a 7 o'clock at the Marsh, and then I'm this Saturday at the Black Rep Theater in Berkeley. I MC the Pan Oakland Awards, and it's the Pan Oakland Awards are named for Josephine Miles, who was a poet and English professor at Berkeley. I don't think they call it the Josies yet, but maybe, I mean, it's been around for 30 years. So 30 or more years. So maybe they'll start calling him the Josies. Anyway, I'm emceeing that. That's free at the Black Rep Theater, 2 p.m. on Saturday. So a bunch of things where I'm appearing. And then I've got a new show January and February that I'm doing in San Francisco. So go to amok.com at some point and I'll post up new information on that. So I just want to update people on where they can see me, um, and we'll be seeing you at the doctor's office, huh? Is that right? Making a public appearance at your doctor, your local doctor? No, no, Dan. Look, I appreciate you coming on. We joke and but we do get into some serious subjects that you're not going to hear a perspective from an Asian American Filipino perspective anywhere else, but maybe here. I mean,
Well, we got to, you know what we got to do? We got to be talking to our Filipino and Latino relatives and friends
Mm,
about what the big, beautiful bill did to financing the now non-professional medical. What do we call it? Vocations now. You know,
yeah,
it's
is
no
that what?
longer a profession. It's just a vocation, right?
And that's how they limited the amount of money, the scholarship money.
Yeah, I'm gonna hit that hard. I'm gonna do it on the phone tree thing.
Okay.
And
All right. Well, we'll talk about that. All right. So Dan,
all right,
I
man.
appreciate you being on.
Thank you.
And
Happy
always a
Thursday.
pleasure to have you with us. And I'll talk to you again soon. Okay, there he goes.
Thank
Daniel
you.
Phil Gonzalez, my friend, College of Ethnic Studies, Asian American Studies, San Francisco State University, Professor Emeritus Daniel Phil Gonzalez. Thank you very much. So, as I said, I'm emceeing the Penn Oakland Awards, Black Rep Theater, this Saturday, 2 p.m. It's free. Joy Reid of MSNBC, or MS Now. No, then of MSNBC, not of MS Now, but she did win an award. I don't think she's going to be there, but she might. I'm she I don't know what's going to happen. Uh, let's see. William Wong won an award for his book Sons of Chinatown. So it's multicultural, and the reason why I do the Pan Oakland Awards, not just because I'm the a board member, but it's everywhere in the country. Multiculturalism, diversity under fire, but not in Oakland. Not as long as Penn Oakland is around. Um, that's important. So anyway, if you can make it 2 p.m. on Saturday at the Black Rep Theater in Berkeley, right there off Adeline. Also, I'm going to be doing something December 15th, Monday Night Marsh. That's not free, but I think there's a generally low cost. I'm appearing with a couple other performers. I'm going to be doing Christmas stories. Uh, a lot of Christmassy things happen to me. A lot of things happen to me around Christmas. I'm going to tell those stories. They're funny. There's a narrative. They will be parts of future Emil Amok monologues. And if you want to see where the Emil Amok monologue is now, catch me. And go to amok.com and I'll put some information soon on where you can see me in San Francisco in January and February. And the key thing is, it's the spirit of do the performance, pass the hat, and you can donate because there's some private foundations that have backed the performers, and um, and so um, we get the space. We still rely on you for your donations, and you can come for free to see it. The foundation support enables us to do the show for an audience for free, and then you can pay and support the artist as you see fit. That really is the spirit of the Fringe. And that's happening in January and February. All right, that's it for me. Let's we'll say goodbye now. I do a little meditation. Meditation is helpful. If you've missed any or all part of the show, we've been on for an hour and 23 minutes or so. Just rewind and use your finger, whatever platform you're using on YouTube. Tell your friends about the show. This is kind of like the secret show. I am going to put it on the regular, podcasting, Emil Muck's Takeout podcast. But it's converse. It's a lot of work. Anyway, so um, anyway, we end each show with a little meditation. Sharon Salzberg, one of my gurus. I you got to have more than one, because they all strike you in different ways and tell you to do different things. And so the loving kindness meditation has been invaluable to me. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time.